3 men were never found. One man survived 4 days alone in the open Atlantic. No food, no water, no rescue. And then the phone calls started. Separately, on a remote Canadian highway, a young man stopped his car for a stranger. He was dead within hours, but the stranger kept driving. And for the next several days, he introduced himself using the dead man's name. 2 cases, different decades, different countries. Neither has ever been solved. Tonight on Dark Chronicles, we open both files. 4 men left the Georgia coast on April 12, 1990. Only one came back. And what happened in the days after? The phone calls, the voices, the single sentence spoken in broken English, has never been explained by anyone. To understand why, we need to go back to the night the boat started sinking. The captain was 23-year-old Billy Joe Neesmith. His crew were men he trusted with his life, his brother Nathan, his nephew Keith Wilkes, and a close friend named Franklin Brantley. The vessel was the Casie Nicole, a commercial snapper boat owned by Doug Tyson. It had just completed 5 weeks of scheduled maintenance in dry dock. Everything checked out. They departed late afternoon. 7 days out, 7 days back. Routine. By nightfall, they were deep in open water. Nobody on land expected to hear from them for a week. 3:30 in the morning. Nathan Neesmith was alone at the helm when he felt it. The boat wasn't riding the waves. It was pushing through them, heavy, sluggish, resistant, like something enormous was pulling it down from beneath the hull. He woke his brother immediately. They checked the control panel. The reading confirmed it. The Casie Nicole was sitting dangerously low in the water. They moved to the bow where Keith and Franklin were sleeping. When the light came on, the water was already a foot deep inside the sleeping quarters. The bilge pumps were completely inoperable. No mechanical defense, no way to stop it. 4 men, miles from shore, in the middle of the Atlantic, with nothing but buckets. They formed a line and started bailing by hand. In total darkness. Billy Joe worked the emergency radio simultaneously. Mayday call after mayday call. No response. Every time. Then the engine stalled. All power died. The radio went permanently silent. They deployed their life raft, a 2-man inflatable for 4 grown men. They abandoned the Casie Nicole and climbed aboard. The raft had a hole in it, about the size of a quarter. By sunrise it was sinking. Then, drifting past them on the morning water, the hatch cover from the Casie Nicole surfaced. A flat wooden panel torn free as the boat went under. They tied their dying raft to it and pulled themselves on top. 4 men. A floating door. Open ocean in every direction. In the distance, Nathan spotted the overturned hull of the Casie Nicole, still afloat. 3, maybe 4 miles away. He made a decision nobody agreed with. He was going to swim for it. His crewmates begged him not to. If they separated, if anything went wrong, there was no way back to each other. Nathan swam anyway. He swam for 9 hours, from 9 in the morning until just before dark, through open Atlantic water, swallowing salt water, burning under the sun, his strength failing and rebuilding and failing again. He did not stop. Just before nightfall, he reached the overturned stern of the Casie Nicole. He dragged himself onto the hull and looked back in the direction he had come from. His crewmates were gone from sight. He spent the night alone in total darkness, clinging to a sunken boat in the middle of the ocean. The next morning, a large freighter appeared on the horizon. It moved in an unusual pattern, circling and stopping 4, maybe 5 times, in the exact direction where Nathan had last seen Billy Joe, Keith, and Franklin. For nearly 3 hours it moved that way. Then it disappeared. Nathan would spend the rest of his days wondering what that freighter found. April 15th, 1990. 10 a.m. Nathan Neesmith was found 20 miles off the coast of Georgia, alive, inside a large wooden bait box that had broken free from the wreck and floated to him like an answer to a prayer. 4 days, no food, no fresh water, open ocean. He survived. The Coast Guard launched a full search for Billy Joe, Keith, and Franklin. They found nothing. Officially, all 3 men were presumed dead. And then, the phone calls began. Weeks after the disappearance, Nathan's sister Oneida answered her phone at home. The man on the other end spoke Spanish. He couldn't understand her responses no matter how many times she spoke, but he could do 2 things with precision. He repeated her family's phone number, and he repeated their name, then static, then silence. That same day, Doug Tyson, owner of the Casie Nicole, received an identical call. A male voice, Spanish-speaking. The only English he appeared to know was Doug's name and his telephone number. Neither family mentioned the calls to each other. 6 weeks later, they met in person. When Oneida described her call, the Spanish voice, the repeated name, the number, Doug Tyson went completely still. He looked at his wife. Same call, same day. Over the following year, 5 more calls came in, 3 to Wanda, 2 to the Tysons. Then on March 6, 1991, 11 months after the Casie Nicole went down, Oneida answered one final call. The voice spoke a single sentence in English. "I'm bringing him home." The line dropped. There were no more calls after that. Billy Joe Neesmith, Keith Wilkes, and Franklin Brantley have never been found. The calls have never been explained. 3 men lost at sea. A survivor left with nothing but silence and strange phone calls from voices that knew things they shouldn't have known. No resolution, no bodies, no confirmed answers. Some disappearances leave wreckage behind. Others leave something worse. They leave a person behind who was watching, and is still watching, and still has no idea what they saw. This next case is about exactly that kind of disappearance. Except in this one, someone else was watching too. And they had a plan. By the time anyone realized Philip Fraser was dead, the man who killed him had already been using his name for days. He knew Philip's hometown, his parents' professions, his college enrollment, his backstory. He had extracted everything there was to know about a 23-year-old man. Then he shot him and drove away in his car. To understand how, we need to go back to a roadside cafe in the remote interior of British Columbia, June 1988. Philip Innes Fraser was 23 years old, born in Anchorage, Alaska, to 2 physicians named Robert and Shirley. He had grown up outdoorsy, intellectually driven, skilled at violin, and quietly determined to follow his parents into medicine. After a restless year at Western Maryland College, he made a decision: re-enroll at Evergreen State College in Olympia, Washington. Fresh start, new chapter. In June of 1988, He packed everything he owned into his 1983 black Volkswagen Jetta and headed west. He planned to camp along the way, take his time, breathe before life got serious again. 2 days in, he crossed the border into Canada on June 17th. Border agents confiscated the 2 handguns he had brought along, legal in Alaska, prohibited for American travelers entering Canada. Philip drove on, unarmed, unaware. The following morning, June 18th, a man was dropped off at a roadside establishment called the 40-Mile Flat Cafe, deep in the British Columbia interior. 600 miles from the border crossing, Philip had passed through the day before. The cafe was run by Gay Frocklage and her daughter Tina. They noticed him the moment he walked in. White male, early to mid-20s, 5'9", roughly 230 pounds, brown hair, brown eyes, badly decayed teeth, a strong, unpleasant odor. He ate quietly, paid his bill, caused no obvious incident. But both women felt something they couldn't fully explain, a persistent, physical unease. Tina would later tell investigators it felt like a sixth sense, that this man was capable of anything. When he finished and stepped outside, a black Volkswagen Jetta pulled into the parking lot. Philip Fraser had stopped, apparently searching for something in his car. The stranger walked to the driver's window and asked for a ride. Philip refused. He started to pull away. The man ran after the car. For reasons that have never been explained, Philip stopped. He unlocked the door. The stranger climbed in. As they disappeared down the highway, Tina turned to her mother. "He's going to live to regret the day he picked that man up." It was the last confirmed sighting of Philip Fraser alive. 8 hours later, 200 miles south, a couple named Eddie and Pauline Olson were flagged down on a remote stretch of highway by a man who said his car had broken down. He seemed nervous. They took him in for the night, offering him the basement of their home. The next morning he came upstairs and introduced himself. "Philip Fraser," he said, "from Alaska. Parents, both doctors. Enrolled at a college in Washington State. He had memorized everything." He then proposed selling his car to the Olsons in exchange for a plane ticket out of the province. When Eddie said it would need to go through customs, wait until Monday, the man said he couldn't wait. He needed to leave immediately. Then the Olsons noticed something. He was carrying 2 wallets. He handled them with visible secrecy, angling his body away, rifling through the contents with deliberate concealment. He gave them $20, fixed his car, it needed nothing more than a new fan belt, and left. 12 hours later, Philip Fraser's Volkswagen Jetta was found burned out and gutted in a car wash bay in Prince George, 300 miles away. Nobody had seen anything. The interior had been almost entirely destroyed by fire. When investigators traced the vehicle back to its owner, the Anchorage Police Department dispatched a patrol car to the home of Robert and Shirley Fraser. It was the middle of the night. That was how Philip's parents learned their son's car had been found, burned, abandoned, emptied, on a highway in Canada. A full search was launched. For 5 weeks, nothing. Then, on July 27, 1988, Philip's body was found in a gravel pit off Highway 37A, the Glacier Highway, near Stewart, British Columbia. He had been shot with a handgun, left in a remote pit off a desolate road. Based on the advanced state of decomposition, investigators determined he had likely died within hours of the cafe sighting. The stranger hadn't driven with him for long. He hadn't needed to. Among Philip's belongings that were never recovered, his credit cards, his checkbook, his passport, and his birth certificate. The killer didn't just take his life, he took his proof of existence. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police conducted an extensive investigation. Composite sketches were produced and circulated. Multiple witnesses came forward, each describing a man who had introduced himself as Philip Fraser and recited Philip's life story with practiced fluency. Investigators concluded this was not opportunistic theft. This man had extracted information deliberately, systematically, and then eliminated Philip so that no contradiction was possible. One suspect was considered and officially ruled out. Beyond that, nothing. No name, no confirmed identity, no known origin. He appeared at a roadside cafe in the remote interior of British Columbia, murdered a young man, spent days performing that man's life for strangers, burned the evidence, and vanished. Philip's father, Robert, spent the rest of his life waiting for an answer. He died in 2014, 26 years after his son was left in a gravel pit off a highway in the Canadian wilderness. The case remains open. The man who wore Philip Fraser's face has never been found. 2 cases, different oceans, different roads, different decades. In the first, 3 men vanished into open water and left behind nothing but phone calls that should not have been possible. In the second, 1 man was erased so completely that his killer walked around in his identity for days without anyone knowing the difference. Neither case has been closed. Neither family has had answers. And somewhere out there, the silence continues. If you have information regarding the disappearance of Billy Joe Neesmith, Keith Wilkes, or Franklin Brantley, contact the United States Coast Guard. If you have information regarding the murder of Philip Innes Fraser, the BCRCMP Provincial Unsolved Homicide Unit can be reached at 1-877-543-4822. These cases don't bury themselves. We'll see you in the dark.